There's some new ownership chatter. There are some new broadcasters, and there are some new titles for some guys from the front office. We're going to talk all about it as we get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_Warren. Follow me over on the Skeets. I think that's what we're calling Blue Sky posts. That's at warren.bsky.social. Been watching this team for 30-plus years, covering them for about half that long, and eager to see what the future has, especially in light of our first subject today. But before we talk about that, let's talk to Mr. Dave Brown, a ball writer since 98, BBWAA since 2012, and a Hall of Fame voter for the second time this year. We, Dave, spoke to someone who left their last reporting job in 2012. So that's going to be a fun episode that'll drop on Saturday morning, but you got your start in the BBWAA as this guy was leaving.
Right. I had been with Yahoo for a few years and was ready to be embraced into the bosom of the BBWAA. But, sometimes they're very particular about who they let in. So they needed to do a few extra years of screening for me. But I'm all good right now. So I got my dues paid and everything.
Well, and so that teaser is that Matthew Leach, the new beat reporter that's taking over for Do Young Park on MLB.com on the Twins side of things. We had a nice little chat with him, 34, 35 minutes long. So always blowing past that 32-minute mark that we are always trying to earmark our shows for. But I think the extra 3 minutes are worth it. And so you'll have to tune in on Saturday morning to find out wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you watch your YouTubes, because Locked On Twins is on all of those. We are your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. And again, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, and the Locked On Podcast Network, as a result, we're your team every day. Again, we'd love to hear from you in the comments, too. If you're watching us on YouTube on the premiere, give us a shout. Give us a thumbs up. Hit subscribe. Give us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on if you like the show. If you don't, reach out to me privately. Tell me what we can change, and I'll see what we can do. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The first whistle to the final drive. FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if that first bet hits. Visit FanDuel.com to get started, and you can see that ad running on the bottom of our screen as well. So if you miss it, just make sure you check out the scroll below. Mr. Dave Brown, what's that?
Yes, Brandon.
So in preparing for this show, I had a couple different things kicking around, and then Dan Hayes drops, I don't know if you'd call it a bombshell, but he tweets, and I quote, "A league source described Justin Ishbia as a very, very serious candidate to buy the Minnesota Twins and believes he has the funds needed. Team's estimated value is between 1.5 and 1.7 billion. Dan's story also talks about how the Twins are active in exploring trades, some international signing stuff, some shakeups on the broadcast and front office sides, which we'll talk about in subsequent segments here. A little note on Diego Cartaya. I'm not trying to aggregate all this, but a good article that Dan put out where it seems as though, I know we've had some sporadic updates about potential ownership changes, but I feel like this is, slowly pushing the stone up the hill, and I think we're making progress.
For sure. I don't know if there was there seemed to be a lot of information. It's just in the most recent report, but people are definitely eager to kind of move this along. I think one point that I did kind of, maybe I'm imagining it, but I get the feeling that this is kind of the person that the pull ads want to sell it to, but they just want to make sure that they're not being greedy, but they want to get every last dime they can out of the guy without making it look like they're trying to squeeze him for every last dime. So I feel like if you could just make it a little more like how the Orioles, how much the Orioles were sold for, something like that is going on. That they're just kind of making sure that how bad do you want the Twins, Mr. Ishbia? So I think that's kind of where we're at. And somebody, a commenter at some point, I don't know if it was Twitter or Reddit or whatever, made a good point that these guys, both Ishbia brothers, but this is just, I guess, Justin, right? That's going to be interested in buying the White Sox. But both of them were
Twins.
Yeah, they both own part of the White Sox, like a small part of it.
Oh, got it. I wasn't aware of that.
It's possible that, people kind of were wondering, well, hey, is Jerry Reinsdorf going to sell the White Sox? And I remember now that this was kind of related to that they've, I think in 2021 or so, it's a minority, 1% or something of the White Sox. But to do that, it's possible that maybe the Ishbias were vetted already. And perhaps that will make it so the process will not take as long as it otherwise would have if they didn't already have a piece of the White Sox. I don't know for 100% that that's true. I don't know if baseball has a policy, Major League Baseball has a policy that, if you want to buy a piece of the White Sox and give Jerry Reinsdorf some money, you can just do that, and we're not really going to vet you. And, that could be the case. And it might be that, the vetting and the right of refusal, that only happens when we're talking about a majority or a significant portion of the team. So it's possible that might not have any effect whatsoever, but it couldn't hurt that the Ishbias already have a piece of the White Sox that at least one of them anyway would have to sell if they wanted to buy the Twins as well.
I think one of the funnier things, the precursor, the thing that makes Dan's article a sequel is that Lavelle Neal III of the Star Tribune kind of shared or kind of what was it, teased that he had an article coming up in the morning about the new owners. And in classic Lavelle form, he has accidentally set his tweets to cannot be responded by anybody who doesn't follow him and doesn't realize he's done that. And so he lobs this Twitter bomb, maybe more like a grenade, not a bomb, at like 11:30 at night and says, story should be up in the morning. Nobody can comment on this because it's only people he follows. And so then
you can't comment if you quote tweet it.
Right. And
right. Like, does that count as a comment? I don't know. I thought he was being smart about not letting people reply because it's like Twitter and people are jerks. That's not really what's going on.
I'm 100% convinced he ticked that box by accident. Just knowing what I know about Lavelle. Anyway, so here were his bullet points. There have been double-digit inquiries about purchasing the Twins. The distance as far as California. So timetable looks like numbers, not final offers, will be kicked around in the coming weeks. Forbes has 1.46 billion. Sportico has 1.7. So we'll see what happens there. Due diligence being taken place so that the check doesn't bounce. Happened in 2001 when Donald Watkins wanted to buy the team, but they had no idea where the money was coming from. Sounds a little familiar to the boys over at Target Center. The only one who is known with interest is Justin Ishbia, as stated by Lavelle in his third bullet point. He reported earlier this week that he does have a small stake in the White Sox that would have to be sold, and also a stake in Nashville Soccer Club of the MLS. What does it mean for the Twins? Positive reflection of their situation. They play in a modern ballpark. The lease will be extended most likely. Remaining debt will be paid off this year. Yada yada. In other words, also the kicker is expect a former Twin to be part of any ownership group as a limited partner. And so I think we all think that it's Joe Mauer, but he also teases Justin Morneau, who we'll talk about in a minute, and maybe Torrey Hunter. Limited partnership, so it might just be 1 or 2% ownership. And also he says not to really worry about payroll stuff because until they know who the new owner is for sure and walks up to the podium, nothing is final. So long and short of it is, it seems to be gaining momentum, but nothing is final. I think based on stuff I've heard, secondary market, back channels, I think it's still Justin Ishbia or bust. I really do. I know that Lavelle is saying Many people are interested. It does sound a little Trumpish. More and more people are saying they're interested. But I think ultimately the goal is to get this in the hands of the Ishbias. And it's the best deal, not only for the Pohlads, which we know the Pohlads are going to pursue, but also for fans. That all of this financial prudence the last couple of years is going to leave the team significantly under any sort of competitive balance thresholds. So if they decide they want to be a spending ownership group, they will have room to do so without hitting any sort of glass ceilings.
I think that's kind of a fun game to play. Which former Twins can afford to buy a piece of the team? Who's wealthy enough? Who made enough money in their career to be able to possibly afford?
Who would be the funniest one? I said Delman Young.
You certainly would think that he would have some money left over to do that, and not any interest whatsoever, other than possibly making money. I just don't know.
Vance Worley would be hysterical. He literally crosses out the Twins logo on anything he signs that he's wearing it. So that would be pretty funny.
I like the idea of possibly Torrey Hunter. That would be fun, and it's always good to have more even minority ownership, if you will, black ownership in baseball. It's not going to be a huge chunk of the team. Joe Mauer does make sense, but it could be Morneau, like Lavelle says. So don't assume that it's Joe. So it would be funny if Justin Morneau were a broadcaster for the team and a part owner. I don't know how that would work exactly. That would be it's not a conflict of interest, but it's just kind of weird.
Tom Brady's doing it as part owner of the Raiders and a national broadcaster, and people are kind of like, not really sure about that one, Chief. But
well, how do you do a Chiefs Raiders game when you've got a part owner of the other team who is part of like meetings about, well, who should we get as this player or that coach or whatever?
The Raiders need a quarterback like that. That's the elephant in the room. It's like, hey, Sam Darnold, you want to go play for the Raiders? Tom Brady was just ripping you on TV. That's probably not a good look.
For sure.
Yeah. Let's take a break, our first one, and discuss afterwards the new titles for some guys in the front office. We'll discuss what it means, because to fans, sometimes, these positions are kind of just words that we don't understand. So we'll talk about that. And then we'll get into a little bit of the broadcast talent that was announced here in the last couple of days. But again, first, a quick break. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me, and I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for. And Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And it brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium services and features. For me, one of the best features is a subscription tracker, which I have used to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and it helped me save a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right. Well, we are back here, Locked On Twins. Dave Brown, Brandon Warren. Again, reminding you, Matthew Leach episode coming out Saturday morning. If you want to get to know the guy that's replacing Do-Young Park, fascinating man. And Dave, I really enjoyed the conversation. I suspect you did too, because he's a very interesting cat.
I certainly did. I've known Matthew for a long time, at least as long as he has worked for MLB.com in one capacity or another. So we will talk about things that he's done for MLB.com, which range from being a beat writer for the Cardinals to being an editor and not an executive. What's the other word I'm looking for? A manager, let's just say, of the beat writers. And he's done the national writing as well. So he comes to the Twins with a great perspective, and he knows about living in the Midwest. And Minneapolis is still considered the Midwest, right? Sometimes I hear like Upper Northern Plains and that kind of thing, but he knows what it is to live in this part of the country.
Yeah, I think, and he talked about the relocation. He's in Georgia, and I think he's going to enjoy it. And he'll be relocating full time, it's an interesting change from Georgia to Minnesota. I can tell you that much.
He's not necessarily excited about like ice on the roads, but I'm sure you people will warm him up accordingly.
Yeah, let's hope so. We told him about some of the little quirks of Twins Twitter. So again, check it out. Saturday morning, 8 a.m.
Whit Merrifield was out.
And great trade, Falvey. Twins announce promotions in the baseball operations staff. Comes out earlier this week. Alex Hassan, Sean Johnson, and Josh Kalk all upgraded to assistant general manager in recognition of their contributions and impact within the club's baseball operations department. Derek Falvey is quoted as saying, Alex, Sean, and Josh have played an integral role in shaping the success of our organization, and we are eager to see their continued growth in these expanded capacities. Their work has been pivotal in building a strong major league roster and one of the top farm systems in the game. Their individual expertise and dedication are essential to achieving our goals as a team. Now, my initial thought, so Hassan's this is his 8th year. Sean John, I love calling him that, this is his 24th year, and then Josh Kalk is in his 8th year after coming over from the Rays. To me, this is just kind of backfilling the role vacated by Jeremy Zoll, but also a way to elevate these guys and keep them in the organization because they are all imminently poachable talent. And it's a good problem to have if you're an organization where people want to take your talent, but that's part of why, like, president of baseball operations and GM were kind of separated out, and team president, and like all those roles exist because then teams also can pay personnel to do different things, but still, keep them at a relatively high level. I don't know. I'm happy for these guys, and I think there's probably going to be a nice bump in pay, but it's really more along the lines of, hey, we want to keep these guys, so let's elevate their level, right?
It's true. I think there seems to me, it was kind of funny. I saw that everybody was all these people are being named assistant GM. It was kind of like Oprah giving away cars at first. And you're an assistant GM. And you're an assistant GM.
To the regional general manager.
So that's not that unusual for teams anymore. It used to be that maybe maybe there would be lots of assistants, but they didn't necessarily call them that. But back in the day, so I don't know like exactly how different it was. Let's say when who was the GM in '87 when the Twins went to the World Series? It's
Andy McPhail took over was he the one that took over in '87? And I think the story was we were just trying to get our act together and we won the whole dang thing.
Right. Hey, let's do that again. Why can't the Twins just get their act together? That's what I want to know. Is that all it takes? Just get your act together?
I don't know. Yeah, Andy McPhail, Tom Kelly. I know they had like Jerry Bell was there, Jim Rance was there, but yeah, Andy McPhail, before he took off for, he went to Chicago, then Baltimore, then Philly, I think, and I think that's how Terry Ryan ended up in Philly after Minnesota. But they were just trying to get their act together, and they won the whole dang thing.
I think that it's true though that there are more executives and assistant GMs maybe than there used to be back in the day. So I wonder sometimes if when we say great trade, Falvey, maybe we should mention like 3 or 4 assistants because
Jeremy Zoll now. I mean, does it have to change to great trade Zoll?
Well, it was never great trade Levine,
right?
So no, it's still good as long as Derek Falvey's in the organization. He gets credit for the great trades. I mean,
it's like Ric Flair. You're always the man, no matter where you are.
That's true. I think Ric Flair is a good person to live by. A good credo to live by. So
sure.
Yeah.
So with that said, all of these now are going to be right-hand men to Jeremy Zoll, who I guess is probably a right-hand man to Derek Falvey.
Are there any left-hand men I mean, are we discriminating against?
No, now
lefties?
that Caleb Thielbar left, they're really desperately low on left-hand men in the entire organization.
I hope Rocco doesn't care. I think at his core, I think there are two Roccos. You know, it's like the duality of man. The duality of Roccos is, we don't really need the lefty specialist because we can get by with good relief pitchers who are effective against lefties, no matter what hand they throw with. But there's something about Rocco's old enough that he's like, I need some more lefties on the rotation, or else I don't feel safe.
Yeah,
and so I think he needs some left-handed men.
Break it up.
To your right-hand man.
And isn't the origin of the phrase "see it on the right hand of God the Father Almighty" like it says in the Apostles' Creed? I think it's the Apostles' Creed. Anyway, I think it comes to the idea that the right hand.
I've seen those movies, but I don't remember anything about apostles in the Creed movies, honestly.
No, I thought you were talking about Apollo Creed. We're getting our wires crossed here, though. Yeah, so nothing too terribly surprising here. These are all people that I have heard are very well regarded in the community, both locally and at large. I think Kalk was credited with some pretty big stuff with Tampa Bay. When we were really getting to understand what front office roles looked like at 2009 to 2017, I feel like we all kind of were starting to figure things out about 2009, more about the teams behind the curtain as opposed to the stats that they maybe were starting to get into or that we got into that they knew beforehand. So I feel as though it's not terribly surprising that any of these guys are being promoted and that maybe a year from now we're looking at one of these guys or multiple of these guys being on short lists for some pretty important jobs.
Well, you made a good point earlier about how the promotions and the even a bump in a title can make a difference in terms of who's going to come after your organization as far as poaching it for talent for their own organization. So this will keep them happy. I don't know if like how much more money the assistants are going to make, if that is, if their duties are changing that much. With the pole ads, maybe it will be different with the Ishbias. If there's a new organization there, as far a reorganization of the organization when ownership changes. So, but I think it is important to just kind of, if you make it seem like you are progressing in the bureaucracy, that is going to just make for a happier worker. Whether you're a mid-level, a mid-manager, or anybody. So it's kind of like, when you're in a line. Either in the car or in a store waiting to see Santa or whatever, and you're like, I just want to move up a little bit. I don't want there to be so much space between us and the next person because it just doesn't seem like we're getting any closer to Santa. I just want to make it seem like I am advancing in the executive baseball world, and whether I actually am or not, it's all about perception. And I just want to perceive that I am progressing. So I think that's at least half of the reasoning behind these promotions.
Beautifully said. Well, let's take our last break. When we come back, we'll talk about the primary broadcast talent for the inaugural season of Twins.tv. We'll be right back. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win that first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Keep it going, unlike the Vikings who lost in the first round, but we don't need to talk about that. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to make some added excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, coming down the home stretch here, Locked On Twins, Brandon Moore, and he's Dave Brown. Again, emphasizing Saturday's episode will be exciting for people wanting to get to know the new MLB.com reporter. Matthew Leach did report on MLB.com for the Cardinals at the turn of the century. In fact, he dropped this today, and I'm not sure if people will understand the reference, at least not of a certain age. But the that he covered them first in 2002. And if people don't realize, that was the year that Darryl Kyle passed away around midseason in, I believe, Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. And
yes,
so
it was
quite a year for a rookie man on the beat to have to cover, the death of a very well-known and well-regarded player. So again, very, very interesting conversation that I highly recommend. Covering the team on the television side of things, a lot of returnees. It's mostly returners. But with that said, something that I'm intrigued by is that, so Corey Provis, 3-time Minnesota Sportscaster of the Year, returns as play-by-play, but the primary analyst is listed Justin Morneau, Twins Hall of Famer. Now, I don't have the email or anything from last year how this was announced, and again, things are different because it's Twins.tv as opposed to Bally. So maybe Bally took care of that on their own. I don't remember for sure. But to hear Justin called the primary analyst, I'm hoping that means he's at least slightly more close to full-time, closer, because I love what Justin Morneau brings to the table as a broadcaster. I think we're getting away from the idea that you have to have the good face and the good voice. Not that Justin Morneau doesn't have those things.
What are you saying? No, I thought you were trying to pay him a compliment. You just called him ugly.
But the number one thing I want from a broadcaster is curiosity and a desire to have questions answered and answer those questions for people who have those. He is curious to no end about the game of baseball and wants to know why things are the way they are and explain them to fans. I, like we say at the beginning of the show, I've been watching the Twins for more than 30 years. I learned something from him on pretty much every game. I love Justin Morneau, and I hope he is in that seat on the right hand of Corey Provis far more often than not.
I really like how you described Justin's sensibilities as far as being a broadcaster go. I think that that nails it pretty good. He's very curious. He's a guy too. Here's a quality. There's a humility about him that he expresses clearly that he is not a know-it-all. Then this is a person who played Major League Baseball. He doesn't know everything about the game. He doesn't know, at least he's not expressing himself in that way that, well, this is why they're doing that. And isn't it obvious, you stupid people at home, John Smoltz? But he's not like that at all.
He doesn't hate baseball too, which is good.
It's that's probably important. Now, I don't really know Justin other than have interviewed him a few times, so I don't want to speak for him. I do get the feeling that he has been, just because of how much he works, he's away from the team sometimes, and I think he wants to. It's important for him with his family to have that option.
Yeah,
so
he's
I understand that.
Kids.
Well, when you've multiplied that many more no's, you've got to you got to be home for him sometimes. So I understand where he's coming from as far as that goes. Now, just me as a selfish fan, I like the other people who fill in for him or our broadcasters along with Corey as well. I think Denard Span does a good job, and I think Trevor Plouffe does a really good job. Yes. And I think Roy Smalley was fine.
He retired, by the way. We didn't say that out loud, but
we didn't.
Part of this announcement was that Roy Smalley was stepping away from the microphone.
So no more Roy Smalley. I like the idea of there being just for symmetry and for continuity and the sound and the feeling. I'm a little disappointed when Justin Morneau is not in the booth for a game. It's like, oh, it's the other guy. Well, that's all right. We can deal with that, I guess. But on the inside, I'm like, I really wish it was him. So the more games that he does, the better. Now, again, that said, the other analysts bring their own thing, and they're good, and it's fine. And it is just baseball. So, Dave, stop worrying about it too much. Who cares if Justin Morneau's not there for 162 games? But it would be nice if he was there a little bit more often. So maybe we'll see that in this season.
You do sound a little bit like Twins Twitter creating problems in your head just to justify.
I'm gonna have to correct that as soon as possible. Thank you.
So when Justin Morneau started, I went up to him after a session in Rocco's office. And I just said, I mean, you don't know me more than just very little, and you don't care what I have to think, but I think you're doing a really great job. And he hadn't quite found his voice yet, but he was doing very well breaking down the game. It kind of reminds me a little of like where Tom Brady might be right now, if you can remove the conflict of interest of like the awkwardness on the air, because you don't quite have that, how to come in and out of points and when the color commentator should speak versus defer. And a lot of that has to do with your partner too. And Kevin Burkhardt is really good at what he does. So I think he's brought Tom Brady along quite well. But when I said that to Justin, and I want to say it was back in 2019, he used to make this face when he was hitting and an umpire would call a borderline pitch a strike. He'd kind of do this. And he made that face when I said it, to which I thought, hey, he actually cared that I said that. And it actually, he wasn't just blowing me off as some schmuck that was in the manager's office with him. I said, no, like, you're doing a tremendous job. And this was, 5 years ago. I think he's come a million miles and was solid from the analysis standpoint to begin with. I like that he's a little more modern of a player, but all of the players are theoretically modern from the analyst standpoint, because it's also going to be LaTroy Hawkins, Glenn Perkins, Trevor Plouffe, and Denard Span. Now, I know Denard Span, I don't know if he lives in the area. I know he married a woman from the area. Trevor Plouffe lives in California. Glenn Perkins, I'm certain, lives around here. And I think LaTroy Hawkins, I don't know if he's a Texas guy. I know Torrey Hunter is a Texas guy, but I don't think he lives locally either. So that to me kind of indicates that Morneau might get more than just half the games or whatever. And I don't have the number that he did last year. I just know previous years, I was always disappointed when it's like, Justin Morneau will have 76 games this year. And I'm like, cool, but I want 176 because count the playoffs, right? No, and then with that said, Tim Laudner, Audra Martin, Katie Storm, and pre- and post-game stuff. So not much change there. Tim Laudner's always been a great dude to me. I love talking to him. He's an interesting cat in his post-game shows, but I love Timmy. I have no complaints with this group, and I'm just hopeful that it's a lot of Justin Morneau. And if we could do the 3-person booth too, I really enjoyed that when they would have Corey, and I don't know if they ever had Corey Morneau and like Plouffe. I know they had Corey and then like Plouffe and Perkins. Or I love the idea. More is better if they all share a common goal of a good broadcast rather than just dumping all over the game or what they hate about the modern game. And that's not what these guys do.
For sure. You get that a lot. I think Plouffe tries really hard to incorporate some of the newer ways of looking at baseball in terms of analytics into his commentary about the game. Perkins has worked on his broadcaster voice. He's got good pipes for broadcaster. He sounds.
Yes.
One thing about all these guys is they are able to sound like they know what they're talking about, and that is like half the battle right there.
I think that's where Morneau maybe came up short early, was the confidence needed to sound like you believe that you're an authority.
Well, I think, and that's where maybe his reaction to your critique, positive critique of how he was doing, comes from. Because maybe it's a little bit like being a writer, where ultimately, you kind of have to write for yourself when you're a writer. Yeah. And not necessarily worry about what everybody else thinks. But if you don't worry about what everybody else thinks, boy, you better be a good writer, or else you're not going to be in that job for very long. So you can't. It's really kind of a trick bag and a layered process and all that stuff. So it's a little bit of making sure that if you're writing for yourself, that people out there and broadcasting for yourself, the people out there who are consuming it are going to like it. It's not an unimportant thing. So
that's the thing I've struggled with as a writer too, is like, I write all this and I'm like, who would want to know this? I already know all this information, and I write things that I think are interesting because then hopefully people will think they're interesting. And I think that's what feeds into like the concept of an imposter syndrome, where you're like, I'm not good at this because I don't think I do interesting things, or I don't think I do things very well. And so I think that, again, like anytime you create, that's where you have to get over that hurdle and just keep pushing on, because the bar to clear is surprisingly low for being a competent writer in today's society. And
and sometimes for broadcasters, there's a guy who broadcasts for the White Sox who is incredibly ignorant about things. And I don't want to get like too much on like another team, but it's interesting to watch White Sox broadcasts when they went from Jason Benetti, who, I don't want to say that he prepared too much, but he certainly prepared enough for broadcasts. He was ready to hit you with some things that nobody saw coming. and maybe that rubbed the people the wrong way. This new guy, for the past year or so, doesn't seem like he prepared at all. So I would much rather have the person that prepared too much.
Yeah, over prepare and under deliver, or whatever the saying is. Hard to say that Jason Benetti under delivered on anything he did, though. He's tremendous, and Justin Morneau's tremendous. So yeah, full wrap. We talked a little bit about the potential new ownership. It seems like it's chugging right along, and again, I think too the fact that the time period that they're floating is so near maybe does lend to someone being already vetted, or at least the process having been started. I think that's a good thing to consider. New front office titles for front office guys. So if you're catching us right now, check back first couple segments. Whole lot of fun. And then again to Saturday morning, Matthew Leach, MLB.com will be on with us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. So again, he's Mr. Dave Brown. This is Brandon Warren signing off, saying thank you so much for hanging out with us on Locked On Twins, and we'll see ya
tomorrow
night.
Tomorrow night.
Like
Like to see you. Played for the Twins.